All right, so today we're going deep into Fuji music through the life of its creator, Alhaji Sikiru Ayinde Barrister. I think a lot of our listeners have probably heard Fuji music, but they maybe don't know much about it. So can you maybe give us like a quick rundown of like what it sounds like for people who haven't heard it before?
Oh yeah, definitely. So imagine this really driving Yoruba drumming. And then on top of that, you have this almost spiritual chanting. But then, woven into all of that is this really raw poetic storytelling. And it's all in Yoruba.
Oh, wow. So it's like this amazing mix of all these different elements.
Exactly. It's really unlike anything else you've ever heard.
Okay, so that's Fuji music. But the name Fuji, where did that come from?
Well, you know Mount Fuji,
Yeah.
that iconic Japanese mountain. Well, Barrister actually named the genre after that.
Really?
Yeah, he wanted his music to reach those same soaring heights.
I love that. So ambitious. Okay, so let's rewind a bit. Back to 1948, Lagos, Nigeria. This is where Barrister was born. And you can really see how his upbringing influenced his music, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he was surrounded by Yoruba culture, Islamic values. All of that really seeped into his music.
So it's like all those early experiences were like setting the stage for Fuji music.
Yeah, you could say that. And, you know, his education played a big role, too.
Yeah.
He had this traditional Yoruba education. And then he also studied the Quran.
Oh, wow. So he had this really strong foundation in Islamic chanting.
Exactly. Those were chants. They became a core part of his sound.
So you've got the Yoruba rhythms, you've got the Islamic chanting, and then you've got Barrister himself, this incredibly talented musician. I mean, I heard he was already captivating audiences with Islamic songs when he was really young.
Oh, yeah. He had this natural charisma on stage, even as a kid.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So he's got all these influences, all this talent, and then in the 1970s, he creates Fuji music.
Yep. And it was revolutionary.
I bet.
I mean, think about it. Introducing Islamic chants to like a pop music scene in the 70s? That was bold.
Super bold.
But Barrister had this vision, and he went for it.
And what did that vision look like?
So he took those were chants, blended them with Yoruba percussion, added his own poetic lyrics, and boom, Fuji music was born.
Wow. So he basically created something entirely new.
He did. He didn't just mix genres. He created a whole new genre.
And people loved it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
His debut album, Iba, that dropped in 1967. It was a hit.
So that was like the beginning of this Fuji music phenomenon.
It was. And it just kept growing from there. You know, he went on to release over 70 albums.
70 albums?
Yeah.
That's incredible. That's like a whole career in itself for most musicians.
Exactly. Albums like Fuji Garbage and Reality, those really cemented his status as like a musical legend.
Wow. Okay, so we've talked about the success, but I imagine breaking into the music industry with a brand new genre, it couldn't have been easy.
It definitely wasn't. There was a lot of pushback.
Really?
Oh, yeah. A lot of people just didn't get it. They thought it was too traditional, too rough around the edges.
Did he ever talk about those early struggles?
Oh, yeah. There's this story about a club owner who refused to book him. Said Fuji music was too rough for his crowd.
Wow. So what did Barrister do?
He didn't let it stop him. He kept performing at smaller venues, building a following.
So he basically just powered through the resistance.
He did. He believed in his music. And he wasn't going to give up.
That's some serious resilience right there.
It is. And, you know, I think those struggles actually made his music stronger.
How so?
But you can hear that grit, that determination in his music.
Yeah.
It's not just pretty melodies. There's a rawness there, an intensity. That speaks to the challenges he faced.
So those struggles became like a part of his sound.
Exactly.
And it wasn't just about the music either. He was also showcasing Yoruba culture on a national stage.
Absolutely. He was proud of his heritage, and he wanted to share it with the world.
It's like he was a cultural ambassador.
It was. And that's one of the things that makes his legacy so powerful.
For sure. Okay, so we've talked about his early life, the birth of Fuji music, and some of the challenges he faced. But there's so much more to his story. So in the next part of our deep dive, we'll explore his music in more detail. And we'll see how he continued to innovate and evolve as an artist.
It could be good.
It is. So we talked about Barrister being resilient and fighting to get Fuji music recognized. But I'm curious, like, how did that actually play out in his music? Did it, like, affect the sound of Fuji music itself?
Oh, definitely. I mean, you got to remember, this is Nigeria in the 70s and 80s. Things are changing rapidly, politically, socially.
Yeah.
And Barrister's music reflects all of that.
So it wasn't just like love songs or party anthem?
No, not at all. He was singing about real life, about the struggles of everyday people, the hopes and frustrations of a nation in transition.
So it was almost like his music became this voice for the people.
Exactly. He was a chronicler of his times. And he wasn't afraid to get political either.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Like in his song Reality, he takes on corruption head on. You can just feel the anger, the frustration in his voice.
Wow. So it was like protest music, but with a Fuji twist.
You could say that, but it wasn't always so serious. It could also be really playful and even funny in his songs.
So there's a range of emotions in his music.
Oh, absolutely. He could make you dance, make you think, sometimes even make you cry.
That's amazing. Okay, so we know he was deeply rooted in Yoruba culture, but how did that actually show up in the music? Like for someone who's never heard Fuji music before, how would they recognize those Yoruba influences?
What's in everything? The language, the instruments, the storytelling style.
Oh, okay. Can you break that down a bit?
Sure. First of all, he's sang mostly in Yoruba. So that immediately connects you to that cultural space.
Right.
And then you've got the instrumentation, those talking drums, the baka, the sakara. They create this polyrhythmic foundation that's so unique to Yoruba music.
So it's not just the lyrics, it's the whole soundscape.
Exactly. And then there's the way he incorporates Yoruba proverbs and traditional stories into his songs.
So he's like weaving this tapestry of Yoruba culture.
He is. It's really beautiful.
It is. But did he ever like modernize his sound? Did he ever experiment with different genres?
He did. And that's actually where some of the debate lies.
What do you mean?
Well, some critics say Barrister's later albums got too commercial. They say he strayed too far from his roots.
Like how so?
Well, he started using synthesizers, and his melodies became a bit more pop influenced.
So some people saw that as selling out.
Yeah, basically.
But, I mean, artists evolve, right?
They do?
So was he selling out or was he just like growing as a musician?
That's the question, isn't it?
And what do you think?
I think it's more nuanced than that.
Okay, how so?
Well, Barrister was always pushing boundaries. He was always experimenting.
So maybe he was just trying to find new ways to express himself.
Yeah, and the music industry was changing too. Technology was evolving.
So maybe he was just adapting.
Exactly. And you can't forget about the influence of the younger Fuji musicians. Guys like Wasu Ayinde, K1 The Ultimate. They were bringing in new sounds, new styles.
So it was like a back and forth.
It was. Very dynamic scene.
So even as Barrister got older, he was still open to those influences.
Oh yeah, he was always learning.
That's pretty amazing.
It is. It shows his humility, his willingness to grow.
Even though he was considered the master of the genre.
Exactly.
Okay. But let's not forget about the challenges he faced in his personal life. I mean, he had some serious health issues, right?
He did. In his later years, he battled with diabetes.
And it got pretty bad at times.
It did. There were times when his health really deteriorated.
But he kept making music.
He did, even when he was in the hospital.
Yeah.
Hooked up to machines, he was still laying down tracks.
Wow. That just shows how much music meant to him.
It does. It was more than just a job for him. It was his life force.
That's incredible. Okay, but we can't talk about Barrister without talking about his passing. He died in 2010.
Yeah.
What was the reaction like?
Oh, it was huge.
Yeah.
It was a huge loss, not just for Nigeria, but for the music world.
Yeah.
When the news broke, it was like a shockwave went through the country.
People were devastated.
They were. His funeral was massive. Thousands of people came to pay their respects.
Wow.
It was a testament to the impact he had, not just as a musician, but as a cultural icon.
It sounds like he was more than just a musician.
He was a symbol, a leader, a voice for his people.
And his legacy lives on.
It does. His music is still played everywhere.
That's amazing. So even though he's gone, his spirit, his music, his message, it's all still alive.
It is. He achieved that Mount Fuji ambition.
He did.
He created something that transcended borders, something that touched people's hearts.
And that will continue to resonate for years to come.
Absolutely.
Well said. Okay, so we've talked a lot about his impact on music, on culture. But what about the personal lessons? What can we as listeners take away from his story?
That's a great question, and it's something we'll explore further in the last part of our deep dive.
So we've talked about his music, his impact, all that. But for me, it always comes back to the lessons. What can we actually learn from Barrister's life? You know, what can we take away from his journey?
It's that belief he had in himself, like he never compromised his vision. He knew he had something special.
Yeah.
And he wasn't going to let anyone tell him otherwise.
Yeah. It's like he was saying, this is me, take it or leave it. But it wasn't arrogance or anything, it was confidence.
Right, it was knowing his worth.
And that's such an important lesson for any artist, especially young artists who are just starting out.
Absolutely. You got to believe in yourself, even when no one else does.
But it wasn't just about talent either, right? He worked incredibly hard.
Oh yeah, he was a workhorse. Over 70 albums, constant touring. always innovating.
That takes serious dedication.
It does.
And it reminds me of this saying, talent will only get you so far. It's the sweat that makes you shine.
I love that. And Barrister's a perfect example of that.
But not everyone has that drive, that relentless ambition. Do you think that was just part of his personality? Or was there something deeper fueling him?
Well, you gotta remember his background. He came from humble beginnings. He had to fight for everything he achieved.
So maybe it was that combination of natural drive and the circumstances he faced.
Yeah, I think so.
It's pretty inspiring.
It is.
And then there's that other side of him, that connection to his roots, his pride in Yoruba culture.
That was huge for him. It was at the core of his music.
He could have easily tried to fit into other genres, to appeal to a wider audience.
Right. But he chose to celebrate what made him unique.
Exactly.
He made Yoruba culture a central part of his music.
And it worked.
It did. He didn't succeed in spite of his cultural identity. He succeeded because of it.
And that's such an important message, especially today, when it feels like everyone's trying to fit in.
It is. Barrister showed us that it's okay to stand out, to be different.
To be proud of where you come from.
Exactly.
So thinking about his legacy, it's not just about the music, it's about the values he embodied, the lessons he taught us.
Right. It's about resilience, perseverance, believing in yourself, staying true to your roots.
And using your platform to uplift others.
To make a difference in the world.
Yeah, that's the kind of legacy that lasts. Well, as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm just feeling really grateful for Barrister, for his music, for his life, for the lessons he taught us.
Really left his mark on the world.
He did. And I hope our listeners are feeling inspired.
Me too.
So to everyone listening, go out there, explore, create, and never be afraid to let your own unique light shine. Until next time, keep diving deep.